we're so busy wanting what other people have that we never pause to realize just how far we've come, just how much work and energy has gone into who we are and who those persons are who's brought us. Right? So I recognize those people. Can you do the same? Amen. Always begin from a position of gratefulness before we even go further. Leadership. Leadership is one contentious issue. Across space, across history, leadership is always a contentious issue. It's not always possible to get it right, because it's a large issue that will work. Some of it you have to learn on the job. Right? You have to learn on the job. Some of it you can learn from textbook. Some of it you can learn from observing. Some of it you learn from making mistakes and then fixing it. Right? So leadership is one of those things, and even scholars struggle sometimes to adequately define leadership. Right? Yes, there are experts who somehow have given some thought on it. But if you think about it as in your own personal journey, you will realize that sometimes leadership is not all that it has been defined to be. Right? And one of the things I found interesting, in looking for the presentation, I thought, why not just see if I could find, from biblical scholars, is there any kind of definition that could be provided? Because the Bible may give leadership models, and the Bible may give leadership framework, but the Bible didn't really define leadership, right? So you get an idea of what leadership is, what it could be, but you don't get any definitive statement as to this is what leadership is, right? So I looked at this content online, and it's he's a president and the leader of Formation International. So it's a Bible publication company, and his name is Bill Lawrence, and he says that leadership is the act of influencing, serving others out of Christ's interest in their lives, so they can accomplish God's purposes for and through them. Right? Let me read that again. Leadership is the act of influencing or serving others out of Christ's interests in their lives, so that they accomplish God's purposes for and through them. That is a religious perspective. But let's look at keywords. Because we're going to be talking, if you're going to be looking at comparing things, you have to really look at keywords. Right? So I then looked at another scholar. This is my pastor, Spirit scholar. His name is John Maxwell, and he's really a big deal when it comes down to leadership. Both spiritual and temporal leadership, because he actually straddles both. And he said, leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. So the biblical definition was, leadership is the act of influencing, serving. Influencing, serving. John Maxwell says, leadership is influence, full stop. Now, I found it interesting then, since all the definitions I've looked at kept talking about influence in some way or talking about serving. So I looked at what possible could we look at to say influence, right? So John Maxwell went ahead and he also defined influence, and he said that he measured influence in 7 areas: your character, your relationships, your knowledge, your intuition, your experience, your past success, and your ability. Right? So, in other words, it's how you deal with people through your character, how you form relationships with people, how you share what you know, your feelings, perceptions, your own observations, your experience, and your actual capability to make things happen. These are things that actually will make people be swayed by you. Right? So the idea of influencing people is really to persuade people into action. And basically what John Maxwell is saying is that when people are influenced by you, they look at certain characteristics. Right? So you need to be of a certain character. You need to act a certain way with people. Right? How you relate to people is very important in leadership. Right? You have to attempt to be someone who is going after knowledge. Because people want to hear from you. People want to hear your views. They want to take your advice. They want to move. So knowledge is important. Your intuition, your ability to know which direction to go, your ability to understand the emotions of people, right? How people behave. Because if you don't understand people and people behavior, you're going to be in trouble as a leader, right? Because people are not always the most thankful, the most grateful, the most forgiving, the most kind, the most huggable. They are not always going to be that. The people you give the most to, maybe the people you get the least from. But that's fine, right? It's okay, because you did not give them necessarily for praise. You gave them because it was out of your capacity to give, out of your capacity to care, right? Also, people are also going to be looking at your past and your past successes. So people are going to be looking at, oh, I will follow this person because this person did well as prior leader. This person did well as brotherhood president. And if he did well as prior leader and well as brotherhood president, he will do well in X job. So your past and your past successes are important, which is why it's in leadership, don't just take job for job's sake. Don't just take position to sit at a particular place. Because if you fail, it follows you. Right? Your ability. So we all need, we all have abilities. Right? A lot of times we focus on some abilities more than some. Because people tend to focus on the easy abilities. So if you speak well, people more likely to give you upfront positions, right? If you go to school long enough, people more likely to give you upfront positions. But your ability is more than that, right? The ability is more than whether or not you are brilliant, or whether or not you have a particular title, right? Your ability stems from innately what are the gifts that you have, right? And so, even if I don't speak proper English, I can actually serve at the highest levels by virtue of the fact that I bring to the table certain gifts that no matter how sweet you speak, you can't get. I might be caring to people in a certain way. For example, let me give you an idea. As a leader, I avoid death-related incidents. Because even in my own family, you see, if someone dies, I don't know what to say to the person who is mourning. I don't know what word to say. I try to avoid you. I will go out of the way to not speak to you because nothing comes to my mouth. And when I meet you, I get tongue-tied. Right? I don't know what to say. I don't know if I should say sorry. I don't know if I should say God will take care of you. Right? Everything I think about sounds fake. But there's a simple man or woman who just out of nowhere comes up and hug, just come with a hug. And that hug says everything that I wanted to say and more. Somebody just come and they sit beside me in silence. They don't say anything and they get such companionship. That don't take brain. That don't take brightness. Right? Because I tell you, I don't know what to say. I'm uncomfortable. But somebody has that kind of empathy. It don't take brightness to have empathy. It just takes you being open to helping others. So your abilities are not limited to whether or not you have book knowledge. Take that out of the sphere. Right now, if you're in a space and if you have degree or you don't have degree, if you're in a space now and you want to serve, begin to open yourself to serving. If you're interested in leadership, don't be concerned about what you don't have. That's the beginning of what you need to start working. Begin to say to yourself, what do I have that I can use to give others? Right? That's where you begin. Not, oh my gosh, I wish I could speak like that. Stop it. Or I wish I could preach like Pastor Smith. Oh, if I had that gift. Stop it. Begin with the gift you have. And if you don't show the gift, that is where you begin. Start searching for it. Right? Find it. Find that gift. That's where you begin in your leadership journey. Right? There's another thing too that we tend to copy. Right? Which is also problematic for leadership. Because it's kind of it's not following in the right way, because it's just copying somebody else. So we copy how someone sounds, we copy how someone behaves, you know. In other words, in so doing, we are actually giving up on our own true authenticity. Right? Jesus wants our authenticity, because he said, just as you are. So he expects us to come as authentic, as real, as true, and you will do the rest. You don't need to sound like foreign people. You don't need to have an accent or an accident. You don't need to have any of the above. Just come. Come with an expectation that you want God to construct you in a certain way. Right? So, we're at influence. And we're looking at what makes people influential. What makes church people influential, what makes politicians influential, what makes business people influential, because the principle of leadership in any sphere is almost the same. So I now come down to two theories. Let's get those out of the way, and I'll move into something else. Theories are principles, are guidelines that people use that forms the basis of how things work. Right? So one theory is the great man theory in leadership. And the great man theory says that leaders are born with the right traits. And you have the ability, the natural ability to lead, and you were born with charisma, intellect, confidence, communication, and all kind of skill sets, right? Great man theory. So in other words, this theory suggests, what's the name of the theory? The great man theory. And this theory suggests that you were born a leader. Right? And you were born with it, and at the right moment, you will become a leader. Right? So nobody can take it away from you based on what they say. If you were born to be a leader, you shall be a leader. Right? So that's one. The opposite of that is what is called behavioral theory. The behavioral theory focuses on specific behaviors and actions of a leader rather than the traits or the characteristics, right? So in other words, this theory about behavior is largely focused on learned skills. So in other words, we believe that in whichever area that you are involved, whether it's technical or human or in other ways, that you can actually develop this skill by virtue of who you meet, by virtue of who talked to you, who mentored you, by virtue of what you have learned, having read, having lived, that actually you can do all those things and be an exceptional leader. So you have two thoughts, because that is really what the theory is. Two thoughts on how things work. One thought says you are born to be, and no matter what happens, you will be that. And another thought that says you can learn to be by virtue of the fact that you experience stuff happen to you, right? You've seen other things happen to people, and having had all those, you now can actually understand and develop leadership. also then move to what we consider to be leadership styles. So, there are maybe about five kinds of leadership that people talk about all the time. There are authoritarian leadership, participative leadership, delegative leadership, transactional leadership, transformational leadership. Are you with me so far? Somebody say amen. Right. So, authoritarian leaders are persons who tell you what to do. They don't want to hear anything from you. Dictators. Right? But dictatorship works in some spaces. Right? For example, most times parents are dictators, you know. Stand up, sit down, shut up. Right? But those are important for boundary setting. Right? The military is also another place where you don't get a chance to ask who or why, or jump or why. You're told and you act. So there's so leadership exists in certain spaces for certain purposes. So authoritarian leadership is one of those. People don't ask your opinion. They don't care about your opinion. Just do what I tell you. Strange enough, parenting is changing nowadays. Parenting is changing from autocracy to becoming a lot more of the other ones we talk about, right? Because people are seeing bigger values coming out of it, right? There's also participative leadership, that is democratic leadership, where people feel valued, they feel appreciated, they feel motivated to participate by the fact that you make them involved, right? You get them involved. You find them, you put them to work, and they want to work, and when they work, you tell them, oh my word, you're excellent. There's, whoa, I couldn't have had a better, and I feel good, so I keep doing work. Right? And the leader is open to the fact that you can come in and work. So the leader don't mark a line here, so and say, don't pass here, so. If you pass here, so, you come into my territory. Right? The leader says this is open door. Come in and make yourself useful. So there's also delegated leadership. The one where I tell you, I assign you things to do, tasks to do, right? Getting you involved by giving you tasks. And this is not the popular work we do. If you work in church, if you work in organizations, because some leaders take on the work themselves. Or they say to themselves, the others won't do it, so I will. I've learned in life never to make that mistake. Right? Because you'll end up with hypertension, sugar, stress-related, other stress-related illnesses that sometimes stress-related illnesses bring on some disease that they're not in the books yet. Right? Stress is a serious disease. Right? It can give you illness that don't exist in books. Right? It's a scary thing. So be careful of the fact that you are stressed. Don't be okay with stress. Don't be okay with people who stress you. Even if you're in a stressful job, find ways to unwind. Find ways to unpack. Go home, relax. You have to find a way to drain yourself of stress. Many people have stressful jobs. If you work with people, you're going to have stressful. Teachers, stressful job because people are stressful. Pastors, we're sorry for you. Stressful job because people are stressful. Nurses, you name it. You know, police, you name it. Majority of people who interact with people is stress-related work. Social, oh Jesus. Right? Parents. Because you love the job, don't mean say you don't get stressed by the work. Parents, it's a stressful work. Because you are sometimes thinking that the child, you have given the child all that the child needs, and the child is now ready to go, and then the child says, no, that's not working now. Way back from point 1, when I feel I've reached point 10. Right? So, it's a very stressful work. So parents sometimes need a break from parenting. Take a break. Yes, man. You're not a bad parent to want to get the people out you're here for a couple of hours. It's being smart and wise. So the art of delegating is important. No, you don't want to just delegate to just anybody. Because it's also a problem. Because some people don't want to work, you know. You have some people that have to be careful of them because all they want to do is to be in the camera moment. They want to be, they want to shine with you. But don't ask them to do anything else because it's not going to get done. Right? So you have to be smart enough to delegate. Pastor, I think I need, I'm feeling the pressures of heat.